Sarah was a young executive working in one of the Burj Khalifa's upper floors. One evening, after a long day at the office, she was heading down to the ground floor when something strange happened. As she entered one of the elevators, she felt an unusual chill despite the heat outside. The doors closed, and the elevator began to descend. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and she felt an unexplainable weight in the air. The elevator stopped halfway down, and the doors remained closed. Sarah pressed the emergency button, but there was no response. A few minutes later, the elevator jolted, and the doors opened to reveal a figure standing outside, pale and disoriented. An older man who looked out of place in the ultra-modern building. As Sarah stepped out, the figure whispered, "It's not your time," before disappearing into thin air. Terrified, Sarah ran to the nearest security guard. But when they checked the surveillance footage, there was no sign of the man. Weeks later, it was revealed that a businessman had jumped to his death from one of the upper floors, and many believed his spirit had been haunting the elevator ever since. Mark, an architect who was working in the Burj Khalifa, was tasked with overseeing a renovation project on one of the building's highest office floors. The floor, once filled with tenants, had been mysteriously vacant for several months. When Mark arrived with his team late one evening, they noticed an eerie silence that filled the space. As they began their work, strange occurrences started happening. Lights flickered on and off, doors slammed shut by themselves, and the faint sound of footsteps echoed through the empty hallways. Mark's assistant, feeling increasingly uneasy, claimed to have seen a shadowy figure at the end of the corridor. As the team tried to continue working, the air turned inexplicably cold, and a feeling of dread washed over everyone. Finally, Mark made the decision to leave for the night, but as they entered the elevator to head down, a voice whispered, "Don't leave." The doors slammed shut and the elevator dropped unexpectedly, causing everyone to panic. When they got off, the floor was completely silent, and no one dared to return after that. The building's management later confirmed that the floor had been abandoned. After several unexplained incidents, some believed that the ghost of a former worker who died in a tragic accident during construction haunted the floor. Samir, a security guard at the Burj Khalifa, had worked late shifts many times before, but one night, he would experience something he would never forget. It was around 2 a.m. when Samir was doing his usual rounds. As he walked past one of the higher windows, he thought he saw a woman, standing alone in the distance, her back to the glass. She was dressed in a white gown, her hair flowing behind her, and she appeared to be staring out over the city. Curious, Samir went to investigate, thinking she might have been another staff member or a visitor who had gotten lost. As he approached the window, the woman turned toward him. Her face was pale, with hollow eyes and an expression of sorrow. Samir stepped back, his heart racing. Just as he was about to turn away, she raised a hand and pointed directly at him. The window then shattered, sending glass cascading to the ground below. Terrified, Samir immediately called for help. When the security team reviewed the footage, there was no trace of the woman anywhere in the building. It was later discovered that a similar incident occurred during the tower's construction, when a worker fell to his death after an accident involving a glass panel. Some believe the woman Samir saw was the spirit of that worker's wife, who had waited in vain for her husband to return.